If it rolls over, that windscreen ain't saving you.
You got launched out of the car.
Oh, well, you know, what it is that my dad turned right on the square and I just slipped out.
And he just kept going. I'll see you at home, Sonny.
Oh, my thong, my foot came astray and my thong just came off.
Well,
and that was the end of it.
Was that your phone that you threw?
I may have flung my iPhone to demonstrate the trajectory of the thong as it flew out the side of the vehicle.
It reminds me, I hired like a moving truck to move house, and like it was $100, and it was like, you know, $100 for 3 days or something, super cheap. I was like, this is awesome. And I go in the car. Well, sorry, it was a big van thing, and you know, I'm not used to not being able to see there was no rear vision mirror, so you're trying to use side mirrors. And the steering wheel, no matter where you put it, there was no straight
play. Lots of play.
It was like you'd have to like go a little bit that way and a little bit that way and then a little bit that way, and you'd be bouncing. You'd be bouncing the whole time, and I remember hitting like a bump, and I launched up and hit my head on the roof and like landed over here. Trying to get back to the wheel, and you're trying to get it straight again. It was weaving down the road like this. You couldn't find you'd be like, okay, I'll get to the middle, and it'd be like, now it's going that way. Now it's going that way.
I was talking about this yesterday. A mate of mine had a Dodge, an old Dodge truck. It's got a 318 V8 in it, and sounds like it's going a lot faster than it actually is. And he said, "Why don't you have a drive? Go check it out. It's got a 10-speed gearbox. It's 5-speed split,
right? And
so you take off, and it's." It's kind of like
now you're going 10 k's.
You're up to walking speed. And then I got to a roundabout, and you know, I know how to deal with a roundabout. And drop it down a gear, and I go to turn the wheel, and nothing's happening. And then the roundabout's approaching, and still nothing's going on. So now I'm understeering severely going through the roundabout, but then I'm going off in the other direction. In the end, I just turned left. So I wanted to go straight, but it's just easy to go left. We'll work our way around that.
We're going this way now.
Whatever way the truck wants to go, I'm going with it. Okay, I'm not going to fight against it. This is the force of nature. I'm just going to work with it. I'm going to ride the wave. And
did he say where we're going? And you're like, oh no, it's just a shortcut.
There was nobody else in the car, in the truck at the time. You know, he just said, take it for a drive, see what you think. It's like, yeah, but that'll be an adventure, and it was. You know, it took me probably 15 minutes longer to get back to it with this truck. But yeah, it was good fun.
You ever driven a car with a column shift?
Yes, yeah.
Confuses the hell out of people. Because I had my first car was a Holden Kingswood column shift. Yeah, and I remember one of my mates at high school, because you know, first car, you're 16 or whatever, you got your P's, and it's like, yes, I can drive it on the road, and great. And then one of my other mates finally got his P's. Oh, I'll go for a drive with you. I'll drive it. Yeah, cool. Gets in, and he's going, Where's the how do I put it in drive?
They're proof.
Yeah, because it was bench seats.
Yes.
And it was like there was no whatever they're called, the gear stick thing.
Yeah, no gear shift. Yeah, no lever in the middle. Yeah,
not in a manual.
There's no H pattern.
Yeah. And so I'm like, it's column shift, and he's like, what? And so pull it forwards, and then you can turn it to. Oh, great! And then he's like, where's the handbrake? The handbrake's on the right. And it was like a shotgun.
Yeah.
And you'd pull it up and click it and then let it drop, and it would go smack.
Yes. Yeah. When it hit that's when you knew you were okay to go.
You can go.
Yeah. I had an XD Ford Falcon. So this is a 1980 Ford Falcon. It would have been the cheapest Ford Falcon you could buy in 1980. It was beige. It had a standard Falcon had a 250 6-cylinder engine, 250 cubic inch 6-cylinder engine. This had
8 ton. Yeah.
This had a 200 engine. It was the cheaper version of that. The standard model came out with a 4-speed manual on the floor, This one had a 3-speed on the tree, like it was, and I'd never driven one on the tree before. And and when I bought the car, knowing I needed a little cheap car or a cheap car to get back and forth, I only paid $500 from the original owner. So it's probably worth $40,000. And so I picked it up, and it was nighttime, and they go out the front to wave you off because you've just bought the car and you signed the thing, and it's like
see ya, go inside so I can drive away.
And then I turned the key quite confidently. I knew that worked well, and then I stood there and I was like, oh. Well, what do I do now? I got 3 pedals and one thing on the, and so I fumbled around, and anyway, they got bored enough to go inside.
Oh, good.
And then I picked a gear, but it must have been second, and it didn't like going. And then so I took a little bit of practice, to get the hang of, but it was quite alien, and often you accidentally pick reverse instead of a forward gear, and these are obviously the reasons why we don't have 3 on the trees in 2022, because people would fucking die.
Absolutely. Hello everybody, this is Hollywood Mad Connelly with the double biceps. It's a little bit trickier in this shirt. It is a polo shirt, it is not a t-shirt, that's why, but we will get there. I'll just give it a bit of a slide. There you go. We'll work around it. And welcome to the Daily Combat Podcast. My co-host, co-founder, co-entrepreneur,
Bicep flexor.
Winner of the Dave Stockbridge of the Year Award, 47 years in a row. Although he did lose it a couple of years in the early 90s.
We don't want to talk about that.
Oh, that's right. Vince Ronaldo.
Mm.
But you did win the hair machine of the year.
I won hair salon of the year in the years that he won.
That's right.
Dave Stockbridge the Year Award. So it kind of does balance out. But I still think that he feels like he was entitled to hair salon of the year. Given that I don't know how to cut hair or have a hair salon, he's probably right.
Do you think that the hair salon of the year trophy looks like a trophy, but it's got the curly hairstyle on the side to go along with Vince Ronaldo?
Whereas with the trophy, you'd normally got the handles on either side of the trophy. With this, just has some trestling, permed hair. just
like rollers,
just cascading down either side of the cup, which serves the same purpose as the handle, but are far more delicate and attractive.
Right. What did the Dave Stockbridge of the Year trophy look like?
Oh, it was just a dome with some pointy ears. And so when you grabbed hold, you actually grabbed hold of the ears.
Right.
So, I mean, it was a different design, but it suited me, and they look good on the mantelpiece.
Yeah. It was sort of like an homage to like the early English teachers that used to pick kids up by the ears.
There may be some cultural references there, but I mean, I can't speak for the designer, but I can say that it's not an accurate depiction of my own ears. As one ear, as you can see, has been well and truly cut across the top, and so and that is exactly why I wear these earmuffs every week. Well, there was that time in the early 90s where there was a little bit of friction, and we thought, I thought, look, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to see the great man myself. Let's put this to rest. Put this to rest, and Vincent was good. He said, look, come down, and we'll talk about it like we're like men. And so I went down, and he said, you're a nice boy, so let's. But you need a haircut. And back then I had more hair, and and not long thereafter.
Right.
This is what we've got. I mean, if you look at the other ear,
pure jealousy.
Let's show the viewers just so they've got perspective. You can see quite clearly.
Was that represented on the trophy?
No. Well, you wouldn't have anything to pick up. The trophy on one side would be lopsided. It wouldn't be asymmetrical. Yeah, it would be asymmetrical. It wouldn't. And anyway, so I'm not going to get into it. There's some legal things. I can't talk about things in detail. But what I can say is that there's, for the viewers at home, there's quite obviously a difference between the left ear and the right ear, and whether or not Vincent Ronaldo was involved is still before the courts. So, it could have been an accident. He claims perhaps it was.
Can we get him on the show?
We'd love to.
Right.
I'd like to talk through this and other issues, especially that early 90s rivalry. And I'd like to know what he perhaps did with the Dave Stockbridge of the Year Awards for the 2 years that he
I wonder
did.
if he's got like a special room in his house of
Yeah.
the Hair Salon of the Year awards. Like, just because he's won that
Yes.
a lot.
He had more awards than years and salons, which is amazing. It was a huge accomplishment,
Right.
and we shouldn't take anything away from the great man.
That's right.
But
Yeah, that's right, absolutely. But what you're saying basically is that you're all for freedom of speech, but if anyone is opposed to freedom of speech, they'll be crushed under the heel of your jackboot. So,
well, and as Vincent would say, watch out what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep it there because one ear still looks good, and you never know.
an unfortunate haircut.
Who's aligned with Vincent in the hairdressing world.
Powerful in the
We all
industry.
need haircuts,
Right.
And so you've got to be very, very careful what you say about the great man, because anybody with a pair of scissors can be his friend, and
Could be an ally. Yeah.
so
They've got the special marking.
we
on their
wish
wrist.
Vincent all the very best, all the very best.
I remember only recently I went to my
Poor old
hairdresser. He's great. We love him. We'd love to talk to him. It'd be fantastic.
I actually want to meet him now.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's built up in my mind.
Oh, it's because he was on TV for my entire childhood, winning the Hair Salon of the Year award.
Yeah.
So it was a very big fixture in my adolescence.
Yeah, adolescence. It was a pivotal factor, pivotal character in your development years.
For sure.
And there'd be many people wondering whether or not they've got the right haircut, or do they look good, do they don't. And for many, many years here in Adelaide, Vincent was the arbiter of that. And so he would be able to tell you whether you look good or you don't, whether your perm was on point or whether it needs to loosen up a little bit, or whether you had too much product or not enough.
Yeah.
And, it was the standards that Vincent set through the 80s and 90s, which really did lay down the groundwork for the haircuts we see today.
Right.
So we do stand on the shoulders of giants.
That's right. Yeah, just the right amount of zhush, I believe.
Yes.
The secret word is
Zhush.
zhush.
You can zhush. And I think that was probably why he won so many awards over such a long period of time.
Makes sense now.
Everybody's got a pair of scissors, but not everybody understands the zhush.
That's the best intro we've ever done.
So these are the things you can't do on Ryan Butt
Right,
because
exactly.
people are actually watching.
The chat would just be like, you guys are nuts.
What the fuck?
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So welcome to the show. It's not a show about Vincent Ronaldo as much as we try to make it about it.
It's meant to be about combat sports.
That's right, it is. Yeah.
And so today, the big episode, the episode everybody is. We're going to call this the Ubeream episode. This is this is the episode about drugs in sport and the big controversy around sport at the moment, especially in those sports that are largely unregulated. And we love one of those sports, arm wrestling, and it's not a heavily regulated sport. In other words, you don't have ASADA coming in and testing the athletes. And there is a great deal of conjecture in the arm wrestling world right now as two of the greats of the sport collide in an upcoming battle. And in terms of who's taking what, and it's almost assumed within the arm wrestling community that our top contenders, our number one and number two in the world, are on something. And what that is and what quantities, we don't exactly know. We don't actually know. So I don't want to cast any necessary dispersion. This is all rumour and hearsay, but it's rumour and hearsay that hits a number of combat sports. And so Matt, we were talking a little bit off air about this particular subject and the sensitivities around it. And one, you've got a regulatory environment. So as mainstream sports start to punctuate the public's consciousness, much as MMA has, they become much stricter. There was a a time in the not too distant past where Pride Fight Series or Fight Championship, I should say, not to besmirch Cardigan Angel's wonderful promotion, but Pride was known for the juicy athletes, and we all know about Prime Vita Belford and Prime Ubeream, and have seen those athletes trounce their opponents when in peak juicy form, and to only find themselves a shadow of their former selves when entering the ring sometime later and no longer under the effects of the supplementation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is quite the minefield, and it seems like UFC are on top of it now. You know, I don't think anybody would look at the UFC these days and see, say, any of the athletes and think, well, look, they're quite obviously on the supplements, but outside of that, there's a whole lot of sports that are kind of, and promotions with even within the combat sports world that you'd be a little bit more skeptical of.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The amateur sports, especially the ones that doesn't have that regulatory body that's overseeing, that's testing. Even you look at, say, bodybuilding shows, and this is what I always find kind of funny and sad in its own way, is you've got your untested shows, and then you've got the natural shows or the tested shows. And it's like, if you're going to compete in bodybuilding, you have your and they're the giant classes, the IFBB, they don't test. And it's like, these are the premier organizations, and then you've got your other side of it, which is your natural competitions. And guys are using stuff in the natural competitions. Yeah. It's like, it's just ridiculous to me. If somebody that desperate to win, it's like, well, how can you feel good about yourself that you cheated? You've got an organization, you can go in if you want to use stuff. That's where you want to be. Yeah. But you can't win in that. Okay, well, you're going to have to go in the natural one and win in that, which is just kind of ridiculous to me.
So I want to talk maybe today about three sports in particular. Bodybuilding, because it's almost accepted practice. Then we've got, combat sports, where it's a little bit squirrely. Some promotions can afford to test, others can't. So there's an enormous amount of goodwill. We've also got a history in that sport of athletes using to maximal effect in the cage or in the ring, and perhaps less so now at the elite level. And then we've got some up and coming sports like arm wrestling, where it's still a bit of a wild west, and there's not a testing regime, and where there's not an overarching league or an authority that's managing the sport. So it's really up to the promoters and whatever the promoters are willing to permit. So perhaps if we is there a comparison between Ubeream in Uber form and Overeem as a normal human being, maybe?
I'll give a little background on this. We talked about this once before on the show, that his levels were astronomically high. And the funny thing is that he didn't test positive for a certain substance. Like he didn't get popped for a name brand steroid. Yeah. His levels of testosterone to epitestosterone were just astronomically high.
So what's the normal level?
The normal level
for a normal human being. So you and me, just normal people.
Okay, so
or even reasonably athletic,
right? So a normal male would sit somewhere between 1 and 4, right? In testosterone, epitestosterone. Yeah. If you're a genetic freak, 1 in a billion, you might get as high as 6.
Wow.
Right? And Overeem tested at 40. So, obviously using, but so he was masking it with, probably other agents in terms of that's why he didn't get caught for a specific substance. Yeah. But then, so to get around that, the testers, this is the cat and mouse game of it. The athletes will find a new path, and then the testing agents, which are always behind, they'll have to figure out how to identify that new path. And that's one of the newer ones that they picked up on is, okay, we can't find these certain substances. We're pretty damn sure this guy's using something. So let's go with this other thing. You can't fake that, and it's going to be very obvious. Hang on, why are you at 40? That's like nobody in history would ever be that. You can't be that without using something.
Be the tomatoes.
Yeah.
Could be
I
had some milk.
Yeah, he did blame some steak horse. He was eating horse. He was eating horse meat.
Horse meat.
Poisoned horse meat. Poisoned with testosterone.
Race winner on Saturday.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Ubeream's dinner on Sunday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, and then obviously he got busted for that. Got suspended, and when he came back,
so what did Ubeream look like a peak
prior to
can
that?
we do
humongous?
Can we do a little quick thing?
Absolutely.
So there was a discernible difference, and there was a discernible difference in performance as I think that even comes up. There we go. Beautiful. That's before.
Yeah.
There we go.
We got this one.
Alistair, look at that.
So, and we'll try to pause it on a certain time.
We'll recognise our friend with the
that's the early fight days he was fighting in. I think he was actually fighting either in Pride or in one
K1?
of the Japanese. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he ended up in K1 as well,
yeah.
and he was the K1 champion, which is just straight kickboxing. But I believe at this time he was fighting in Pride. He fought Chuck Liddell. It was a lot smaller. He was struggling to stay at that weight class. I think he was fighting at 93 kilos or something.
Wow.
And
he's a tall guy too.
Yeah, that's right. And then obviously throughout the progression, you can see the amount of muscle that he's put on to progress his career.
Yeah.
And
you can say, as an athlete ages, especially quite a physical athlete, they're going to fill out a little bit, but does their jaw get that much wider?
Yeah. Well, he's a little bit of a background. So at the time when on the left here, where he was fighting in Pride at a certain weight class, he said he wasn't lifting weights at all. He said if he lifted weights, he was going to put on weight. Like his body responded very well to building muscle.
Yeah.
To stay at 93 or under kilos, he needed to be on a very strict diet, no weights. Just if he starting lifted weights, he's going to put muscle on, and he's going to get bigger, and he can't make that weight class anymore. So he was also running a magazine at that time with his brother, I believe it was his brother, and he was investing a lot of time into the magazine. He lost a few fights in a row, and he's like, "No, I need to give up on the magazine. I need to focus purely on fighting," and that's what he did. And then he started to increase in size significantly, as you can see there.
Yeah.
So he changed his name to the Demolition Man, and he was the Demolition Man. He was destroying everybody.
He was. Yeah, there was that time when he was unstoppable.
Yeah, the Uber knee was his special move. He would grab people with a tie clinch and knee their face off. So
look at him there.
Oh yeah, that was probably his peak on the right. I would say at UFC.
It's kind of amazing because it's not. It looks like he's 5 weeks out from a bodybuilding competition. Yeah. He doesn't look like he's about ready to step in the ring.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I think that was when he was fighting Brock Lesnar. There's quite a good video of him at that weigh-in, and one of the ring girls, Ariane Celeste, who's standing behind him, her reaction is classic. She's just like, shocked, just like, holy crap. Yeah, there he is there.
Just amazing, just a specimen. And to stand there next to Brock Lesnar and to dwarf him, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's insane. Oh, my goodness.
So cutting weight to make it under 120 kilos. So, 120 was the limit you could be at heavyweight in the UFC, and he had to cut down to get under 120. Well, same with Brock. So, and then obviously won the match there. I'm hoping to get an after photo here, which might not be in this video, but you can see that that's his
peak Ubeream right there.
An after.
And in those days of the UFC, was there a testing regime, anything that you're familiar with, or
there was, but it was not as stringent as it is now.
Yeah,
they improved their testing regime significantly. They're now with USADA, which is the overseeing Olympic body. So
Yeah.
they're very, very strictly monitored.
And one of the dilemmas for up-and-coming sports, or for sports where there's not a lot of money involved for USADA, like the testing regime is very expensive for those sporting associations to sign up to it. Because essentially when the organisation does sign up to it, they're saying any of our athletes can be tested at any time. They have to submit to a test, and if they don't, they'll be disqualified from competition for a period of time within that organisation, or banned forever. So there's some real consequences. So we're just panning through some of the
That's
body
the after
transformation.
there. You can see the difference in terms of muscle size that has dropped. I probably get a better result off of Google Images, but just want a side by side comparison. But you're absolutely right that the athletes now are very strictly monitored. And they've got whereabouts checks. They have to, if they're going to go away from where they usually, like their usual house and then their usual gym that they train at, if they're going to be away from that, they have to let USADA know their whereabouts. And it's like, I'm not going to be here. I'm going, I don't know, out of state to California for 3 days. I'll be here. And then they will get tested there, they've got people around the world that do these tests, so you can't really escape it.
So at the elite MMA level, this, within the UFC, this, I'm sure there'll be some examples here. That's such a great Google search.
Yeah.
This is now virtually impossible. Dana White would not want to see this in. Now, is this what fans want to see, though? Like, if you've got a jacked up Brock Lesnar against a peak Ubeream, as we see him at the top there, is that attractive for sports fans? Do sports fans want to see
absolutely.
that? Yeah.
Sports fans absolutely love it.
So
they want the biggest, scariest, strongest, craziest, most muscular, powerful dudes that they're going to be fighting and then destroying each other.
Yeah.
The problem is, the reality is that the athletes are putting their health and safety on the line. And if you're going up against somebody that might be unnaturally 5 times stronger than what they should be.
Yeah.
In a combat sports situation where they are punching, kicking, throwing you on your head, and and not only is it unfair, it's so dangerous.
Yeah.
That's the argument with it. And you can see it with combat sports specifically where, you've got that physicality where you are actually physically overcoming your opponent with striking, with grappling, with submissions, putting your entire body against somebody's joint, that sort of thing.
And testosterone just isn't a strength thing, but it's a reaction thing. It's an instinctual thing.
Recovery.
It's recovery, mood, all of these things which can impact on the moment-to-moment decision-making within a particular fight.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that you would be going in and saying, oh, the person won that fight because the steroids allowed their kick to be, it's not that. But the majority of the time, it's if they're doing like a 12-week training camp leading up to the actual fight, and if they're using stuff the entire time, they are able to train so much harder than a person who's not using anything that might have a really hard training session on Monday and they haven't recovered fully until Wednesday, maybe Thursday. Whereas the person who's using might be good to go the next day, and then the next day, and the next day, and they're gaining so much more out of what they're doing for their training camp, and which gives them a significant advantage by the time they get into the cage. Yeah, and it's like that confidence, that aggression, the skill sets and the recovery that they would have over that time frame to step into the cage and have those benefits over somebody who doesn't have that. And you're going to get that in every sport if somebody is using something. The difference with combat sports, specifically MMA or kickboxing or anything where you're throwing punches and kicks and limbs at the other person's face, head, body, you can be doing serious damage to that person. And I think that's where people are saying, well, this, as much as the audience wants to see the biggest, and you want to see people tearing each other's limbs off, it's like, but in reality, it's like if you're an athlete going into that sport and it's like, well, I don't want to be fighting somebody that is unnaturally 3 times stronger than they should be. Like,
Yeah.
I want it to be, and it's never going to be a fair playing field.
So because it takes away the decision of the athlete that wants to play fairly, they essentially do need to perform
That's right.
at that highest level.
Exactly.
So, and as much as it can be a spectacle for those people that are tuning in or putting their money down for the pay-per-view, and that might be why they're putting their money down for the pay-per-view, long-term prospects for the athletes in the sport. It's almost like a diminishing returns that'll happen over time.
Yeah, exactly. And now with the UFC, you know, with their ridiculous, I'm not going to say ridiculous, but the very, very strict and stringent testing protocols, you know, athletes are different to what they were even 5 years ago. And has it hurt the sport?
I don't think it has.
I don't think it has, in terms of that they've still got a lot of popularity, that it's grown, that people are watching, that the fights are still exciting. But I think there is a difference in terms of the power levels, the the athletes in general, I think, were just this superhuman, like crazy strong guys prior to, but maybe it's putting a little bit more emphasis on strength. It does seem to be that with MMA in general, a lot of the larger guys, you don't have as many really big pure heavyweights. It's not it's a rarer thing to find that somebody that's huge, that's tall, that's strong, that is athletic enough, that is willing to put in the time to learn the techniques of wrestling, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and have the desire and drive to go and be a competitive fighter. So you always find the heavyweight divisions, light heavyweight divisions, generally have less competitors. And the majority of, I guess, people around the world are sort of sitting around that middleweight and below kind of, and it goes the same. The lighter you go, the less people you're going to get on that end as well.
Yeah.
But the money is always in the biggest, craziest, strongest, heaviest fighters.
It seems consistently, although not always so, but if you've got equal parts heavyweight, middleweight, it would be the heavyweights that will be the main event, and the middleweights or the lightweights or it mightn't be. Now, I can just imagine the comments now where people say, but, there's all these cards. But all things being equal, if you had a card lined up and the fights were otherwise even and the names were otherwise even, it'd be the heavyweights that'll be the draw card, and that where the card is tilted towards at the end of the night. MMA seems to have this under control, but it also seems to be as a result of 20 years of evolution within the sport, and also the professionalism that's come to the sport, particularly in the last 7 or 8 years, and the money that's now available in that sport, so that they can adopt a USADA regime that's best in class, best in world, where there's no arguments, and so that regulatory environment essentially ensures that there's huge penalties for those athletes that do transgress and don't conform with the protocols that are in place. So gone are the days of the freakish Ubereams and the Dan Severins, the juicy Dan Severins, the juicy Ken Shamrocks, and those guys. And I'd say in the early days of the UFC, it probably wasn't as much of an issue, because you'd have a chemo against a Hoist Gracie, and it was the David and Goliath. That's what the fans were paying to see, was Hoist Gracie submit a chemo, for instance, or a Dan Severin. And you had, but as soon as you start getting weight classes and you've got categories of fighters that are otherwise evenly matched, then those things that do weight the balance in favour of another athlete really, really do become much more important. The degrees of separation become much greater very, very quickly when you've got otherwise evenly matched athletes, even weight. One is juicy, and the other one not on the supplements at all.
Yeah. I'd say something that's a little bit controversial, but I think that the way it's headed is that all sports at some point will just give up on testing.
Do you think it's a part of that transhumanist kind of worldview where humans are now becoming more integrated with their environments, less insular, more integrating with not just technology, but with these other forms of technology in terms of the chemical technology that's around. And now that we're getting such a high level of sophistication around that it's almost becoming, what's the difference between this chemical that may have this type of effect and another that has another effect that's almost equal to, and where do we draw the lines around those things? And as you say, testing is often behind the technology that drives the athlete's improvement. So where does that leave us? So you foresee a future where testing's just given up and athletes can get away with whatever it is that they might be doing?
I don't think it's that they get away. I think it's just that the culture would change to a point where it's like if you're able to change your genes, like if you're gene therapy, and say your babies were being born in a way that is being designed to be an athletic body. How do you change that and make that fair? Oh, you can't compete. Well, why not? I'm a human. I didn't do this. I didn't make the choice, because I'm 70 times stronger than the normal person, and then it's like, but then you'd have a new a new area of people that might also fit that mold. And it's like, if you're not using these things, then it's like, well, the technology and the technological advances are going to be to the point where it's like, well, you can't compete unless you are this anymore. It's like that Gattaca movie or book. Have you ever seen or heard of that? Basically, there was two classes of people, one that was genetically enhanced and one that isn't. The genetically enhanced people are the ones who got all the good positions and were able to and be entrusted to do all the hard work and hard jobs and intelligent jobs and astrophysicists and astronauts. And
you and I got to do the other stuff.
We were the street sweepers and cleaners and podcasters. Yeah, exactly. So all the laborious jobs were sent to the people that were not genetically enhanced, and then all the genetically enhanced people got to do all the fun stuff. The story of the movie being that one of the non-genetically enhanced guys wanted to be an astronaut and had to hide his non-enhancement stuff, and he had to do a lot of stuff to hide that. It's a good movie, but in terms of that is definitely the pathway that we're headed down
And it's this part of the transgender movement at the moment, where you've got male athletes competing in as trans athletes or transitioning. Let's just say athletes who were born biological men who are now competing in female competition. I think that's factual enough that we can get away with that on YouTube.
Absolutely.
That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's inarguable. So they're born biological men who choose then to compete and are accepted by the sporting bodies to compete in female competition, and they're
with a huge genetic advantage.
With a huge genetic advantage.
Right.
And so essentially you're suggesting that if you want your child to be an athlete and you've got the opportunity to choose genetics, then you'll probably get it born male.
Well, yeah, or with the attributes. I mean, have you heard of CRISPR before, or the gene manipulation therapy? So you can splice different elements out of certain DNA strands, the idea being hopefully that you would be building people that are immune to certain diseases, or but you can go down to what eye color they're going to be born at, what height are they going to be, what gender are they going to be, what attributes this person's going to have. You can choose that, but one of the crazy things about it is all the changes that you make are permanent to that person's bloodline. So it is, if you make that change, and let's say eye color, so you choose that this baby, your child will have blue eyes. Every child that person produces, whether they're male or female,
that becomes the dominant gene.
Then has blue eyes, no matter what. No matter, so even
which isn't the way that nature works.
That's right, exactly. So if I mean, there's good and bad things to that. If you want to eradicate disease, and you say, okay, well, this person's immune to AIDS. Now all their offspring and all of their future offspring will be immune to AIDS. Fantastic. But it can be used negatively as well. So there are good and bad things to that. And whether or not those things are already happening, I don't know. But well, certain
Quite
things
possibly
are.
without us knowing.
Yeah.
So we've got and in the bodybuilding world. So just over recent times, we've had a disproportionate amount of deaths in the arm wrestling world, and people attribute that to
bodybuilding world.
Sorry,
You said arm wrestling world. The bodybuilding world.
am I predicting? In the bodybuilding world. So in the bodybuilding world, there's a disproportionate amount of deaths in the bodybuilding world over recent times, and people attribute that to many factors, and of course a lot of people's attention turn to steroid use as well as other jabs that may have
Other
been had
elements
over time
that were forced upon them in the last couple of years.
that they were required to have in order to travel.
Yeah.
And so this is causing a lot of issues. And it's not unusual in the bodybuilding world for people to die younger than what they would otherwise in the wild. And without that, have we got some examples here of perhaps Ronnie before and after?
Yeah.
Because it's interesting because what I want to share with you is Ronnie Coleman, peak Ronnie and Ronnie now, and Ronnie Coleman's not the oldest guy in the world, but you can certainly see he went through quite the transformation. He's not looking too bad now.
He's had a lot of surgeries.
He's really been struggling. I don't understand his back, but I mean, he put his body under an enormous amount of strain there, and was quite debilitated for quite some time, and is now just working his way back to a level of fitness where he's mobile and can get around once more. But it's been quite the long recovery, and it's no doubt as a result of his long-term weight training, very heavy weight training, and the stress and the duress that he's placed on his body and his nervous system over a long period of time.
Yeah, I think one of the big things with bodybuilding is obviously the performance-enhancing drugs that are being used are detrimental to the body. If they're used in large doses, the largest doses that some of these guys are using, and it's not just that they're using testosterone. There's so many different elements combined.
They've almost got to be a chemist, don't they?
That's right. And to try to find this homogeneous balance of this counteracts this to counteract that to this and that, and your body and your liver and your kidneys and your heart are working overtime 24/7 to try to filter this stuff out, and that's why you'll see
can we have a look at David Palumbo just for a moment?
Sure.
So David Palumbo is a really good example of somebody who was an elite bodybuilder who his physicality over the years has changed quite. It's the first thing that comes up is Palumboism, and you can kind of see what happened with David here was that he had a distended belly. Yeah. Seemingly, the first thing that happens is that the midriff gets wider and wider, the arms get smaller and smaller, and the mass is harder to retain on the thighs and on the legs, and you see it almost looks like the athlete's melting. And I don't think Dave's been quite open with his use and holds some firm views around that. But there's no doubt towards the end of his competing career that he was no longer the greatest exponent of a balanced physique.
No, that's right. Yeah, so that was one of the things. Maybe the last 10 years that sort of gut, I guess, if the GH gut.
Yeah, the bubble gut.
Yeah, the bubble gut. So that generally, I think most people would say is a result of extreme growth hormone use, but it could also be a number of different factors. The amount of food that's being eaten. But in theory, growth hormone which is being used and I guess in a way abused by people that are at this level. It grows everything in your body, not just your muscles. So your jaws get bigger, your bones get bigger, your organs get bigger. There was a bodybuilder that died maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, Dallas Macarthur, young guy, was only 26 maybe, 25, 26. Heart attack, which there was a little confusion about how he actually died because he had food in his throat at the time. I think it has come down to, with the autopsy results, that he had a heart attack while he just happened to have food in his mouth at that time. So the food was kind of, in a way, unrelated to the death. But I remember there's a YouTube video, one of the is a doctor who's going through the autopsy results, and he's reading out the size of the organs from Dallas Macarthur. He's only 26 years old, and his organs were like 3 times the size that they should have been. Heart, 3 times the size. Liver, 3 times the size. Like, it was just, everything was humongous. And it's like, well, that's why your heart just couldn't keep up. And plus you've tripled your muscle mass, and you're doing crazy hard workouts. You're eating a heap of food. You're taking all these different, performance enhancing things. It's like, well, that's probably the end result of that, is that your heart that is working overtime. And not only with that, but you're going to have the arteries, the blockages, the difficulty. Your body's always trying to filter. It's always working overtime, working. Plus the extreme workouts, the dieting, the diuretics, the
extreme
dehydration. Yeah, the tan.
The tanning lotion.
That's right. Yeah. So that combined leads to stress on the major functioning parts of your body: the heart, the liver, the kidneys. And you always see, I remember I sent you that list throughout the week in the last 2 years, and I think there was maybe 30 bodybuilders, 35 or something, and the first 15 heart attack, and then it was like heart attacks, and then 15 in a row, and then it was like liver cancer, liver cancer, kidney disease, and it was like, well, there you go. Those are those 3 major filtering organs, and then the heart obviously is pushing blood around the body, and it's under the pressure to do that in extreme circumstances, and it can't handle it.
No,
that's what happens.
Would you mind just bringing up for me Jay Cutler, then and now, perhaps? Now, Jay Cutler, and the reason why I want to bring this up is because Jay Cutler still looks great. I mean, Jay Cutler stopped actively competing maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, and Jay Cutler still looks really substantial. He's walking around 125, 130 kilos. Looks amazing. Yeah. He actually only ever looks like he's 10 weeks away from competition, even today. Yeah. He's seemingly being able to find a balance. And that picture's from 2018, but that's not altogether different to what he looks like right now. So there's, relatively speaking, Jay would be mid to late 40s now, I'd guess. And he's been able to, he's still maintaining the bodybuilder lifestyle. He's still training hard, training heavy. He's not changed a lot in his lifestyle, and whether or not he's still partaking in the supplementation. Obviously, you can see there's some pretty dramatic changes there in the leg sizes, and obviously his proportions have come down somewhat, but he's still retaining a lot of muscle mass and still looking really good and strong, and still obviously enjoying the gym and keeping in really good shape. Actually, I think that's quite a good look there. That's kind of representative of what Jay Cutler's kind of looking like now, which is still amazing. Yeah. He actually looks fantastic. He looks like a superhero even right now. So he's obviously keeping good shape, looking after himself, and still maintaining a good muscle mass into his late 40s.
Yeah, there is that genetic element to supplementation as well. Some people are going to respond really well, and they're not going to have major heart issues or liver issues. Like, it's just their body just seems to get through it without having major dramas. Some people, just like Dallas Macarthur, 26 years old. Yeah. And it's sort of, you don't know what's going to happen.
No.
And Jay, obviously, still being able to continue a good lifestyle and, looking great and training and feeling fit and healthy. The issue is, like, has he done damage to his body that is irreparable? And maybe, when he gets to 60, he might, at that point is where, but hope like that doesn't happen. Hopefully he has a long, healthy life. But you are rolling the dice because you don't know what's going to happen. When you're...
It seems to be the deaths is quite a sudden death for bodybuilders. It's not a slow death. It's things seem to be going great, they look amazing, and bang.
Yeah.
The heart gives out, the liver fails, and it's so let's say question mark over how Jay would go. But Jay's looking great and still maintaining a lifestyle and obviously still in the gym actively and enjoying himself.
Have you seen the London Real interview with Dorian Yates?
I was going to, if just finally I wanted to turn people's attention to the great man Dorian Yates and just his physical transformation over recent times. And I think they say, that the body is a great representative of what's going on in the mind. And for Dorian's really been on the journey over recent times, a personal development journey as much as anything. And Dorian was, very definitely amongst the first of the mass monsters after Lee Haney. You had Dorian take the O crown and own it for the best part of the next decade. And he certainly pushed bodybuilding to a whole new level until it took a super freak like the juiciest of of Ronnie Coleman's to usurp him. But now what's interesting is that we've got a couple of the great bodybuilders of all time in Dorian Yates and Arnold Schwarzenegger that are now entering the autumn of their years. And Dorian Yates is certainly a lot younger, is now in his mid to late 50s. And Dorian has downsized quite considerably, still training quite actively, still training others in his very specific methodology when it comes to training, very low reps, high weight training. So he's still keeping with that. But in his own world, a lot of yoga, a lot of flexibility training, is now very open with respect to his use of supplementation and steroids, and is suggesting to people, this is not healthy long term. This is maybe what you got to do if that's what you want to be great at. But if you're not going to be the greatest bodybuilder of all time, or you're not a chance of being the greatest bodybuilder of all time, his suggestion is to maybe reconsider to the extent that you're going to partake in these substances and redirect your energies in other areas of your life where, there's certainly more benefit on the back end. And Dorian's certainly been very loud and proud on that subject over recent times. Since that London Real interview, it's kind of shot him and catapulted him back into the public's consciousness, and he's continued to spread the word with respect to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, really intelligent guy. And that interview, he was also on Joe Rogan's podcast as well. And it's a lot of people would not have that same mindset, and I really respect him because he retired, and obviously one of the biggest bodybuilders ever, humongous. And he said for the first couple of months after he'd retired, he still kept training as hard as he was. He was still trying to keep that size. And then one day he was just like, why am I doing this? Like, am I trying to keep this huge, gargantuan body just to impress people, like impress strangers that I don't know and I don't care about? Yeah. And it's like, why am I doing that? I should be doing what I want to do for myself. And so he was like, I don't want to have this ridiculous size anymore. I still want to train. I want to be fit and healthy. And he is. He's probably about 100 kilos. Yeah. Trains regularly. Does strong guy. Yeah. Does, the fun stuff he likes to do. Yeah. But he's like, I don't need to worry about, he goes, if somebody meets me and they're like, oh, disappointed because I'm not Mr. Olympia, like I don't look like I did when they saw me on Mr. Olympia in 1990 or whatever. And it's like, he goes, I don't care about their opinion of me because I don't know who they are. He goes, the people around me that I love and care about the most, their opinion matters to me, and they don't care about that. They just want me to be happy and be able to go and enjoy myself. And he's like, I spent 20 plus years living in a dungeon, basically, training was my life, and I was so restricted, and every moment of every day was dedicated to being Mr. Olympia. And now I've done that. I don't want that pressure anymore, and I want to enjoy the time that I've got with friends and family, and not have to live up to other people's expectations. I see that a lot working in the security industry when I was involved in that there was so many people that they just felt like I've got to be perceived as this really big, strong guy at all times. And it's like, that was everything to them. And it was like, but the people that would make comments to them or say, oh man, why you're looking huge. Oh, no one want to mess with you. They don't even know who that is. Yeah. They've never seen that guy, and they'll probably never see that guy again. Yeah. And it's like, to get that self-worth from strangers' comments is a very dangerous game to play.
It is, and dysmorphia. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's a sense that you've got to be bigger and stronger, or that you're not happy with yourself, regardless of how big and strong you might be. So, regardless of how many compliments, each compliment is just fuel to get bigger. Yeah. The one of the major dilemmas for a lot of those people is that it's a psychological problem first and foremost, and that it's not because they're trying to be the best in the sport. It's normally because there is another issue underlying there for the individual that hasn't been addressed, and their answer might be getting juicy and going to the gym. And it is a sad thing, but it's also because adults don't get a lot of positive affirmation, a lot of confirmation that they're doing the right thing or the good thing. If you're a child and you do something remarkable or good, or then you get a pat on the back. You get told you're on the right track, and this is a good thing for you. And there's something within us that harbors that need for that type of confirmation and affirmation that you're heading in the right direction. And sometimes that comes from when somebody does a little bit of something, like in the gym, and gets some results, and somebody notices, and it's just that first comment. It could be from a friend or a girlfriend or a family member that says, oh, you're looking a bit, oh, look, your veins are sticking out a bit. And then that can be the stuff. That's the first thing. They haven't had a compliment for months, maybe years. And then they get that first little, maybe I'm doing something right now. Somebody noticed, somebody complimented me. And then so the next thing, they're back in the gym for a little bit longer, and then they're getting the tighter T-shirts to maybe get some more of those compliments, and that type of positive attention. It starts off as positive attention, and then can quickly go the other way, as of course, So there's so much that's going on psychologically, and for so many people. But I guess our suggestion, and Dorian Yates' suggestion to people, that unless you're going to be an elite bodybuilding athlete, then you really want to consider your relationship with those performance enhancing agents, as the long-term effects are overwhelmingly not positive.
That's the thing with that self-confidence. If you're doing an activity that you enjoy, and first and foremost it has to be that you're doing it for yourself and you're doing it for your own enjoyment, your own benefit. If that is like the 99% of why you're doing that certain activity, and then like people say to you, oh, you're doing really well, whatever it is, whether it's physical training, or whether it's a certain project you're working on, or a company that you're working on, or whatever, and somebody says, oh, you're doing really well with that, it's nice to get those. It's like, oh, I really appreciate your comment, and it makes you feel good, and that's a nice thing. But it's not, if you didn't get that comment, you were going to be doing that thing anyway. And it's like that reward that you get by doing whatever it is the driving force. And those little comments that come in, whether they're positive or negative, they are, if it's positive, hey, that's nice, I like to hear that. If it's negative, it's like, well, I don't care what you say, because I'm going to be doing it regardless. And if you're doing it that way, no matter what it is, that's where you'll find your happiness and success, as long as it doesn't become an obsession. But if the people that are doing certain things just to get appreciation from others, especially if they're strangers, it's like, well, it's going to end badly.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been training for 20 years. You've been training in the gym. You've been much bigger than what you are now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you weighing 91, 92 kilos, I heard earlier in the week on the podcast, the deep end on Ryan Blue Bowen's channel.
Yeah.
So head over there and check that one out. Make sure you subscribe to receive alerts for when that podcast is released, which is every Friday, I believe now. We've got it on a Friday schedule.
It's on a Sunday morning, 7 a.m. Adelaide time, which is 7:30 a.m. Brisbane time, and I don't know what it is for the rest of the world.
But I think in the big markets of the world, that makes it Saturday night.
It is.
So Saturday night entertainment for you. If you're watching and you're in America right now, you tune into Ryan Blue Bowen's channel, see more of this man. But you're substantially larger than what you are today, and 91 kilos. How heavy were you at your biggest? 120 kilos, and you're 6'2", 6'2"-ish. And what made you downsize?
I went into a competition.
A bodybuilding competition?
Yeah. So I was working security, and that extra size was definitely a positive factor.
In security?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just as a deterrent?
Not just that, but it was physical incidents every night. And it was a very handy tool to be able to just, like, I'm not a trained fighter, but I can grab someone and throw them on the ground.
And when you're 120 kilos,
it's a lot easier to do it that way when you're 90 kilos.
Yep.
So that's what I'd have to do.
Yeah.
So
you were big because it was practical.
Yeah.
And well, your income depended on it, and that was a reason to stay large. Did you feel uncomfortable when you were 120 kilos? And what was the downside to being 120 kilos?
I was happy. I mean, I've always been a bodybuilding fan, and Schwarzenegger's my idol, and I, was training super hard, and I was really happy to be getting this result. But it wasn't like a good 120. It wasn't like a super lean, 10%
It wasn't an Ubeream 120. No,
there was some. I mean, it wasn't completely out of shape. I was training every day, but it wasn't lean muscle. The whole thing. It was some body fat there, but I was strong. Not heaps stronger than I am now, but stronger.
So you haven't lost a lot of strength now that you're 30 kilos lighter?
No, not really.
And probably in the specificity of, say, a sport like arm wrestling that you're training in, much stronger, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's probably in the heavier lifts, like the compound stuff, like the deadlifts or bench press or stuff where it helps where you've got more fluid around the joint, that sort of thing. Yeah. Biceps would be a lot stronger now. And bicep, tricep, the smaller muscle groups, the individual sort of things, either on par or stronger now. Yeah. But yeah, uncomfortable being that heavy. I remember I would sit and be watching a movie, 2-hour movie, and I'd get a stitch. And I'd be like, man, just sitting was like, was hard work. And it was like just everyday tasks, like getting in and out of the car. And it's like you got to, here we go, out the car, yep. And then in the car, squash yourself in, yep. And because everything is tight and, trying to find clothes that fit you and, it was everything was more difficult. Putting your shoes on, and it's not that 120 is ridiculously big. No. That it's it's large, but it's not humongous. It's reasonably big. But
it's the size when you get too big for stuff that's made for normal people. Yeah, like cars. Yeah. And chairs. Yes, and furnishings, clothes. Yeah. It's not made for muscular. Right. 120 kilo frames.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but I was 116. So I was at 120 for a while, and I sort of fluctuated around that, And I remember I was 116, and I dieted down for a competition, and I dieted down to 93.
Okay.
And then
so closer to your existing weight.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So and then after the competition, this is kind of funny, but like on the day of the competition, I was 93, like in the morning. That night, I was 101.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Just from eating and rehydrating. 101. I stuck around that, and I felt a lot better in terms of more athletic. around 101, 102.
So that became the new locus of control for you, around the 100
Yeah,
mark.
yeah. So I sort of sat around that mark for the next probably 7 years or something. And it's only been the last 2 years that I've dropped from 102 down to 90, 92. And I literally haven't changed anything at all. Like, I don't know. It's
Is it age? Is it
no.
conditioning? What is it?
Probably the job I'm doing now, where it's standing the entire shift.
Right.
That's about the only difference. I still train the same. I eat the same. Everything's the same.
Yeah.
But it's a 10 kilo difference from standing compared to there was still some walking and physical activity in the jobs I've been doing in the past, but it wasn't 8 hours standing straight.
And do you feel optimal now? Do you feel like this is a really comfortable, easy weight for you to maintain? You feel good? Do you feel like you look good?
Yeah, I feel good. I feel strong. I feel athletic. There is that mental side of it when you're like when you're bigger and you have that, you feel strong and you feel like, I could, I feel really powerful.
Yeah,
that element is not as prevalent. And I guess it's for the same.
So is that a moderation of the ego that's then required, or what's going? Is it more your internal talk?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is, like, I don't really care anymore. You know what I mean? And
do you think that's age a little bit as well? Like when you started your bodybuilding journey, it would have been for very different reasons to what you're training for now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're 20 years in, and I'm guessing, I mean, from what you tell me, you're training really rigorously. Like there's no drop in intensity. You're training very similar weights, so that hasn't necessarily changed, but maybe the thinking or the motivation behind why you're training in the first place is
exactly
a lot different.
Oh yeah, I mean, as I've mentioned this once before on one of the early episodes. I was bullied at school, and that was a big motivation, and remained a big motivation for me for a long time, maybe 30 years.
Maybe till yesterday.
Yeah.
Maybe even today.
And it was very much not an insecurity, but just like I don't ever want that to happen to me again.
Yeah.
So, and I'm never going to let people treat me like that.
Yeah.
And so, but to be able to do that and prevent people from doing that, I was like, well, I will.
There is something you can do.
Yeah, and I'll get ridiculously big and strong.
Yeah.
And then it's like
far less of a chance of going on then.
Yeah, but it wasn't just for that purpose. It was a big driving factor, but also having the interest in the sport and wanting, and my idol, as I said, Schwarzenegger, and wanting that and loving that culture and. That the people that I was surrounded by are also into that as well. And as you said previously, you are the sum average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Most people that I was spending most time with were all doing the same thing, training in the gym, love bodybuilding. We all talked about heroes, Dorian Yates, and who was going to win the Olympia, and who was this, and
will Victor Richardson ever compete?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And the movies, the action movies, and all that sort of thing was a big influence on all of us. And we're all training at the same gym, and we're fighting together. And
it kind of makes you wonder, because the 1980s really did kind of demonstrate. There's a couple of things that are going on. Did you have a strong male influence in your life, in your upbringing?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was there, but he wasn't into fitness or anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that maybe. I mean, like you said, the 80s movies. And
the 80s movies. Yeah, the reason I ask is because, like, there's, we got to the 1970s, 1980s, and we had a whole generation of men that were being raised by women, and and where the masculine was being diminished somewhat in the eyes of society. And so you had a lot of men that all of a sudden didn't have those strong male role models around them in the same way they might have done in generations past. And so we're finding examples on the silver screen, and whether that was Jean-Claude Van Damme or Sylvester Stallone, but it was always the small guy beating the big guy. It was almost like the fighting against the odds, the guy that was being bullied and was able to turn the tables, or whatever it might be, or the underdog rising to beat against the odds, everybody else. And that was the theme of most action films in the 90s. There just happened to be a particularly muscular man on the movie poster. But that was the overarching archetypal story of many action films in the 1980s and 90s.
Absolutely.
Which is a genre that's very much fallen away today. Absolutely. You don't see those movies any longer.
That's right.
Except for maybe nostalgia's sake, but you don't see them as the prevalent narrative that's being shared within our society in 2022.
I remember watching, I've seen Bloodsport probably more than any movie I've ever watched. And that's the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. But that has been such an... I remember watching that and then just going and doing push-ups.
Do push-ups.
10 years old. And it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try and do something. I want to look like that guy. It's such a hero aspect. It was a big influence, absolutely. And then, training in the gym. But at this point, it is that maturity of... Same with Dorian Yates. It's like, well, who am I doing this for? I don't need to impress people. I enjoy training and I love it. That's why I still do it.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it for a different reason. I'm doing it because I enjoy it and I want to build a strong body and feel fit and healthy and look good.
Yeah.
But I'm not there to go, I need everyone's approval and I need everyone to say, you're looking amazing and because it's like that element is not there anymore. And I think especially in the last year, I've had this feeling of like different motivation, and it's strange. It's a strange feeling because it's like normally when I'm going to lift something heavier, I'm going to do a really hard set. I will envision something that really makes me quite angry.
Yeah, right. You'll tune into the anger or the negative emotion.
Yeah. And that will push me through because I will think of that, whatever it is. Almost went in the wrong direction then. Almost revealed something I shouldn't. But that in the last year is it's that motivation's like it's dissipated. It's gone. And now it's like I try to bring that back and it's just not there.
It's an experience in neurolinguistic programming as well, and it's psychologically and what you find hypnotists will use a similar technique, and that's where you'll take a negative experience and replay it in your mind, and as you do, you might replay it as being black and white, and then you replay it as, without any sound. And then you replay it on a smaller screen in your mind, and then it's smaller and smaller and smaller till it's a dot and it's gone completely. But when you're trying to derive motivation from it, you want all of the emotion, you want all of that to rage and burn within to be able to garner everything that you need from that to be able to expend it in the moment.
That's right.
To get the result that you want, and. But perhaps now that's not that same need any longer, and you've been able to replay it in your mind and reconcile yourself to whatever it was, and to move beyond that psychologically.
Yeah, I don't think it's that I could completely get that, but that for me, I don't think is the reason. I think it's that
what do you feel it is?
I think it's I'm doing stuff in my life now that I really enjoy.
Yeah,
as opposed to
none of whatever was happening can now hold you back.
Yeah, and it's like when a lot of happiness in other activities that are, you're having a great time, like doing the podcast, love it, great, awesome. Arm wrestling, love it, great. Family, wife, got kids, got these things, investments are going well, and it's like all these happy elements are coming together, and it's like you're trying to get rage. Well, how would you get that rage? It's not as strong there anymore. And it's like, but when
do you need the rage anymore? Do you need
that's what I'm thinking. And it's like has it
served
its purpose? Foreign purpose it's a foreign feeling for me now because I've used that for so long, and it's been such a useful tool that anytime something external is going wrong or is difficult, I can get in the gym and destroy that workout. Train like a psychopath, and like push myself beyond the limits, and by using that frustration or whatever, and that's the way I can deal with it. That frustration isn't there, which is a good thing, but that's why it's like, but I can't there isn't that anger there. It's weird. I mean, it's good.
And I don't need it anymore.
But I still want that feel. It's a different. Now I've got to figure out another way to.
Well, people seem to fall into one or two categories. They're either toward motivated people or away motivated people. Some people are motivated away from pain, and some people are motivated toward good things. And rarely are they the same type. So some people are doing what they're doing to keep themselves away from pain, and that becomes the familiar. But there is a transitioning point because you can't live your life like that. There's diminishing returns associated like that, like with Ubeream. There's diminishing returns. So you can only take so much, and then at some point on the other side of that, it fades away. And it's an interesting phenomenon where people find their motivation from, and how that relates to their own self-esteem, and then how that translates into their physicality and their other endeavors. And
it's just weird, man. Like, I don't know, that for me, like, every time I'm about to do something really difficult in the gym, it's like, bang, I can switch. Here we go. All right, there's that power. There's that anger. There's that strength. And it's like, here we go. And then we go and you get the set done. And then it's like, all right, and then you're happy again, cool, everything, talking to somebody. All right, I got to do another set. There we go. It's done again. But now it's like, I try to get that switch and it's like,
you can't.
It's not there.
Yeah,
and it's like,
have you tried screaming out, "Yeah, buddy," and nothing but a peanut?
Nothing but a peanut.
Yeah, if you do that 3 times, I believe you'll rekindle whatever it is that you're needing to be able to push through that set.
Yeah, but I've talked about this with a lot of people.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy. Because like I've been training with a lot of different people recently, which has been great. I love to train. I love training.
Do those partners know about this?
Well, this is what I'm talking to them about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Multiple partners, multiple training partners.
Yeah.
They all know about each other. They're all cool with that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I saw you training with me on. Yeah. How dare you?
I had a training partner once.
I thought I was special.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. We were supposed to train biceps. You were training him.
Yeah. You were training back with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Tuesdays we train back. Yeah. No, it's been really a lot of fun because the people I've been training with recently have been people that are reasonably new to training. And it's like, because I train in the morning after I finish. I finish at 6 a.m. So it's like my friends that I normally train with are like, I'm not coming to train with you at 6 a.m. So I've been training by myself.
New friends.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's what I've done. But the people that I talk to throughout, the shift that they come into the gym, and they might ask, you talk to people and have conversations, and you might be talking about training, and it's like, well, do you want me to just show you how something? And it's like, oh yeah. And then I'm like, look, I finish in 10 minutes. Do you want to just do a session? And it's like, okay, cool. And we'll run through a session, and then maybe the next time it's like, well, if you've got the day off, come in. I'm going to be training anyway. If you want to join me, then great. And you've got maybe 5 or 6 different people that I've run through, and they're at different levels. And it's like, I don't care what level they're at. Like, it's fun to train with somebody else, and I get to, like, I enjoy teaching,
sharing
and showing,
what you know.
Exactly. Yeah. But I do talk to them about, what are you picturing, like, in a set? Because my rep ranges are high, deliberately, because I want that.
You want the pain.
Yeah, I do. I want it to be really difficult. Yeah. And it's like, I want it to start hurting at, like, rep number 10. Yeah. Like, I want it to be hurting at 10. And I'm going to 25.
Yeah.
So 20 to 25 is like, you are seeing white and you're about to faint. But to get through that, you got to have a strong reason. You got to have a strong motivation. You got to have something that you are like, because your body is saying to you,
don't
quit, give up. I can't do this. It's not going to happen. I've got nothing left. And there's one little voice going, oh, man, just maybe you've done 20, just give up. That's good enough. Yeah. But then you've got to have the other side. That's,
no one's counting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, but the other side is like, I'm going to get it no matter what you say, no matter how much you hurt, I'm going to get this. And that motivation, is what's pushing me through. And I usually will couple that with an aggressive thought of some previous trauma, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's like, that is a extra factor that will push me further.
Yeah.
But that part of it is going away.
Yeah.
But when I talk to
and
other
you're not
people,
too sure about whether that's
it's
a good
weird.
thing. It's a bit of a weird thing.
It's good. I know it's good because good things are happening.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if you're happy with outside factors. You don't need that rage anymore, but it's like, but I like that rage.
I like the rage.
I've used it so well for so long. But I'm trying to think
what will replace the rage? What replaces the rage in those moments where you can't access it any longer?
Yeah, well, it's still just the
You're just thinking
discipline.
happy thoughts.
No, that's where the challenge of the other voice in your mind saying give up, and it's like, no, I'm going to get it.
So is there now
matter
more
what.
strength in your mind to resist the moments of weakness and where you would have given up if you didn't have this intense anger or energy or negative emotion that was pushing you through, and you're now able to find within yourself the energy that you need outside of that? Is that and that's now supplanting.
It's coupled. It's a coupled together side of things. You've got the anger and that rage that adds to the strength of refusing to quit. That goes hand in hand, and it makes itself stronger. Without that rage, I can still push to the level and I still succeed. And regardless, like it doesn't have to be there for me to get what I want to get out of to succeed in the reps. But I will have this feeling like if I go to that point where it's like I have envisioned something and it has pushed me into a really frustrated mindset, and I'm using that fuel in a set, it can push me way past where I was going to go. Way past. Say I was going for 25, but I've gone furious, and it's like I'm going to do 100. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like I've got that extra. That hit me so hard, and now it's like, no, I don't care. Like, oh, you were going to stop at 25. Guess what? I'm gonna triple. I'm gonna quadruple that. So, and then it's like, then you push to that, and then it's like, there you go. And that's, I don't know. That's that side of it is missing. Yeah. Which is, but it's painful to do it. It's not painful as in the physicality of the set, but that it's mentally like you went real deep, painfully, like you went into a real painful memory. And that's where you got that result from. Like that, you used that, but you felt that pain to get that result, and you felt it. So you relived trauma to get a result. So it it can be positive, as in you got a massive result. Yeah. But it's negative, as in you went and relived trauma to get it. Is it negative if you're I find if you're heavily reliant on anything, whether it's a substance or whether it's an emotion or whatever they're driving for. If you're reliant on anything, it can be, apart from oxygen and food, and water, it can be a bad thing. Right. And so is it? Yeah. I mean, it sounds like now you're able to access something within yourself that is somehow replacing what you previously needed in order to be able to perform physically at your best. Yeah. Happy days ahead, perhaps. It's weird. Either that or you're going to get very, very weak, and eventually you'll just... It's all over. You'll be 72 kilos in 4 weeks' time. I don't know. I don't know. Do you not get that? Like, this is my question to people when I train with them. I'm like, what are you thinking of when you... And it's funny because one of the girls doesn't... Like, for me, it's very intense. It's fire, it's red, it's anger, it's fury, it's rage. That's me. That's my thoughts. And then, like, shout out to Paige here. But so when I talked to her and I said, what are you thinking of? When you're trying to get to 25 and it starts hurting at, say, 10, 12, what gets you through to 25? And she's like, I'm not thinking of anything. Just doing it. She's like, I'm just in like a happy place, like, just the reps counting through. And I'm like, are you not, like, I know you're struggling. I can see you're struggling. Isn't there like a thought of, no, not really? That is so foreign to me. I'm like, no, it needs to be like the way I'm doing it. Like, I don't get it. Like, that's such the opposite to me. Yeah. I mean, it's probably been quite therapeutic in a lot of ways for you. So I mean, training is a great way of whenever you're pushing yourself against your limitations. It's you find new pieces of yourself on the other side of that, and but it's
I mean, I can't think of. I'm not if I'm training heavily or have done in the past. I can't think I'm accessing any particular negative emotion to.
You're about to lift something real heavy.
Yeah.
Right. You're under, say, the bench press.
Mm-hmm.
You got, let's say, 200 kilos on there. 200 kilos. You're about to lift that. That's a heavy as hell weight. What are you thinking before you pick up that weight?
I hope I don't hurt myself.
Is that it?
Yeah. Well, well, back in the days when I could bench press 200 kilos, the first thing I'd be thinking of is the weight on the outside of my thumbs. That's the first thing I'd be thinking of, because if I could feel that was bruising, I'd know that was it. That I wasn't going to be able to push the weight up, because if I could carry it on the meat of my thumb, then there was no way I was going to get through the first rep. So, and sometimes you just hit a little nerve or something like that, the weight would have to go back up. So the first thing would be pushing it off, holding it, feeling it, and if I felt comfortable with the weight in my hands, then I'd be drawing it back. Now, there's no pain associated on the negative, and so I'd be controlling the negative in as much as I can. And then there's that explosion from the chest, and the first thing I'm thinking about doing is activation of my triceps, and then activation of the chest, because from my end, I always felt like it was pushing from the bottom, and so I'm actually trying to feel inside the muscle to make sure that the muscle and the tendons and everything's going to hold together to get through that rep. Wow. So I'm not thinking necessarily I hate this or I'm angry.
Really?
It's more like I for the sake of self-preservation, I hope I don't break something here and get to the other side of it, and then it's a matter of comfort. And so once I'm through that, usually the first rep or so, and I can feel comfort, I can feel that I'm in a good place, then I'm looking to complete that set. So it's and if it might be 6 or 7 or whatever it might be that I'm trying to get through on a heavy set, then that'll be the progression. It's a matter of simply getting through better than what I did the workout before, or better than the PB that I had before. So I would train 3 weeks and then I'd try and beat my PB. So that it would always be hit the plateau deliberately and then look to smash through it on the 4th week. And then if I didn't do that on that 4th week, I'd be somewhat upset. But I'd normally know after my first or second rep whether or not I was going to beat my PB. And if I didn't, it was normally a result of poor sleep, not great. Usually sleep and relaxation, and sometimes the wanting to train sooner than I was recovered. So sticking strictly to say a weekly regime of doing a body part every week heavy, and I actually found for me it was better every 6 or 7 days. So rather than every 5 days, every 6 or 7 days was better for me.
What's going on mentally during the set?
Mentally, I'm zoned out. It's black. It's not. There's certainly not a rage burning inside. I can assure you.
What's happening though? What are you thinking?
It's almost meditation. So I'm going within. So I'm not trying to draw something out. I'm trying to go within, because I feel like if my mind's outside of myself, then I lose connection with everything that I need in order to push through that particular rep or that particular set. So for me, it's closer. Training is closer to meditation than what it is anger management.
Okay, is that the same no matter the rep range, no matter the exercise?
I would say that's under duress. I mean, the rep ranges. I mean, now I train in much higher rep ranges because I simply can't train as heavily, and nor do I feel like I'm not capable in the same way without really injuring myself at some point. I understand now that my body's not as even as what it might be before. There's certain weaknesses and injuries and tendencies within my posture that would limit me from training in that same vigorous way as previously. So as I've gotten older, the rep range, and to be honest with you, I don't record any. If I do a workout, I'm training for feel. Right. So I'm not counting reps. Loosely. So for instance, this morning I just did body weight squats, and I thought I'm going to do 20. I'm going to do 5 sets of 20. I'm going to do 100 body weight squats, just nice and slow, all the way down, all the way up, and that's going to be that part of. That's just going to be what I'm going to do today. That's how I'm going to. And I couldn't tell you what the last 3 sets numbers were.
Really?
I just trained to a point of almost exhaustion and pulled back. I find on the other side of exhaustion for me is injury, and so I train to that point because for me that there's only downside on the other side of pushing myself beyond. It's just an age thing. I think the hesitancy around pushing myself beyond the comfortable almost inevitably leads me to some kind of niggle or injury that takes me out of action for much longer than what I should. So negating any gain that I may have made from that extra 1 or 2 reps. So I mean that's just moderation over time and not having anything to really train for. I don't think if you're dedicated to a martial art or a particular strength sport, and there's then fine and good on you. But at 47 years of age, I'm just happy to survive the workout without hurting myself.
I just it's the opposite. So
you want to hurt yourself?
So opposite. I'm seeing every set as this is life or death. You got to get that number, or the world's gonna fall apart. And it's like, if I go 20 reps, I'm getting 20 no matter what. The building can fall over. I'll still get that 20.
I was always about training to failure. Like when I was a heavyweight trainer, I would always end with a drop set, and sometimes 2. So I always found it was a warm up set, a moderate set, a heavy work set, and then two failure, and then 2 drop sets. That was the magic formula for me. And so it's always been the feel. When it's a drop set, it's like I wasn't counting. I'm going to do 15 here, and then I'm going to do 10. It's like if I could do 20 and then do 10 and then do 2, it didn't matter. It was when the muscle won't move anymore. When I'm so pumped.
When it's there, then I'll do another 50.
Yeah, and then I'll go back there. Yeah, when you're there and you push through. And, it's that's such as the subjectivity of weight training and the inaccuracy of bro science.
It's funny though, isn't it? I mean, obviously everyone's got different methods, and it's like whatever works for you, works for you.
And it's really intriguing because I have these conversations with Daniel White, who was a guest on our podcast previously, who's a very active weight trainer to this day, and was one of the reasons why I started training in the first place. And he's now gone to training with a higher rep range, much like yourself, but he's dramatically changed how his workouts over the years to accommodate his aging physique and wearing joints and all of those types of things. Where he's now looking at safer movements and he's in the shape of his life now. I've never seen him as strong and physically, he's very, very imposing and looks amazing. Very, very impressive. Very impressive for somebody who's mid to late 40s. Well, you didn't see people like that 20 years ago in the mid to late 40s. But he's an impressive specimen. But probably and he was talking about the amazing success he's now having with his new regime. But I think when you've been doing anything for any length of time, any new regime's a good regime. The body does crave variety in the weight training, and that might bring us nicely to the last example that I wanted to bring our attention to today, which was Devon Larratt, who does change up his training. And seems to have great variables in his own weight, and when we talk about unregulated sports, arm wrestling is certainly one of those at the moment. There's a very important fight coming up in arm wrestling very, very soon, and between Levin and Devon, and so you've got. Levan is a very, very juicy customer, a very, very big juicy man, Georgian giant, and then you've got Devon, who 7 or 8 years ago was standing around at about 100 kilos, who in the lead up to his last major bout looked like he was about 50 kilos heavier than that, and will need to carry that weight and perhaps a little bit more to be competitive with Levan. So there's been some conjecture over his use of substances in order to get himself to such a competitive level. It can, do we have a before? I don't know if we would be able to find so quickly a before and after of Devon Larratt, but there's certainly Devon from 5 or say 7 or 8 years ago, where Devon was highly competitive at the highest levels of arm wrestling, and where Devon Larratt, maybe when he was against Denis Saplenkov, let's try this one. So Devon Larratt is. I mean, it looks great in all of those photos, but this photo here is a good example of, say, Devon from. That's not 2022. I would say that's Devon 2017, 2016, 2017, weighing at about 230 pounds. Tall guy, 6'4", 6'5". Yep. So tall guy. So at about 105, 110 kilos, quite lean. You can see his face and his jaw, and all of his hair. And then that's the man when he most recently competed, and won against Michael Todd. And you can see there's certainly a definite difference in the weight that he's carrying around his jaw, maybe even in the width of his jaw and his chin. He certainly, you would, even though he's a very, very strong guy, you wouldn't say that his arms, apart from some of these amazing poses that you do see where he does, I would say, out-angle himself, out-angles his own head. Devon is known for this particular pose where he does bring his biceps somehow 7 inches forward of his head. But even there, I mean, when he was arm wrestling, the mountain might be thought of as, you know, a good example of Devon when he was, just probably coming off his best after winning the hammer on a couple of occasions and then being beaten subsequently, and just kind of coming out of his, what was thought to perhaps at that stage be his heyday. And then over the last year we've seen Devon come back with a new wind in his sails. There's no doubt that Devon has come from being somebody who 2 years ago was not competitive at a world-class level to somebody who is now competing and thought to be the best or the second best in the world. And that's the difference there, and that's the difference in maybe 40 or 50 kilos of muscle. He's carrying a little bit of chubby wubby down by the down by the hips, no doubt. But there ain't no mucking around. I mean, that's a huge individual standing there at nearly 150 kilos, you'd have to say, and that is a markedly different athlete to the man that you'll see from only 5 years ago. So Devon is now kind of trapped in some respects to peaking for each competition. Is kind of forced to do that, and so this is Devon back in the day against the greatest. So we've got maybe number 1 and number 2 goats on the screen was on the screen at the time.
It's Andrei Pushkar there, I think. Andrei
Pushkar behind the shoulder, and Devon pushing through. So there does seem to be a time when to be a high level. So Michael Todd without the beard.
That is Travis Bajan.
There he goes. Turns around. There seems to be a time where only 5 or so years ago, Devon could have competed naturally and at around that 110 level, but the athletes around him have grown substantially during that time. Even athletes of the same era. So Michael Todd, for instance, I mean, he's always been a strong looking athlete, but I mean, he's now nearly 50 and looks like a cartoon character. I mean, he looks like somebody out of a Marvel film. He's an amazing specimen. Talking about physical freaks right there. Lubke just giving in at the end. I mean, that is a genetic freak in himself. So we're now in this scenario where even those people that have got all of the talent in arm wrestling really do have to prime themselves in order to be competitive on the table on the day, and give thought to what other supplementation and like may have. Is this bad for arm wrestling?
No, I think that it's going to be the same in all sports. And one of the key elements to success is if you can't beat your local level without having to use stuff, you're not going to be an elite, I guess, in arm wrestling or in any sport. If you are not successful at the basic entry level, then taking performance enhancing drugs to get yourself above that means that you're never going to make it at the elite, because the elite were successful all the way through until they got to the very top. And then at that point, if they want to go against the other elite, that's where, okay, now the difference can be the performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
But if somebody is starting, let's use arm wrestling. So somebody joins a local club and they're struggling against the people that are there. They might be a year in, and it's like, okay, you might be ranked 12th. So you can't beat number 11, you can't beat 10, or all the way through to 1.
Yeah.
But then you might start using something, and all of a sudden you can beat everyone.
Yeah.
You can beat everyone there. But that doesn't mean that if you go to a national competition that you're going to be able to win there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's your limit.
Yeah.
And you had to use something to get to there.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody is naturally genetically advantaged, they can beat people in the club, they can win at the national level, and then they're going into the international level. And then adding the performance enhancing to somebody at that level is going to carry them to the elite. And even the people at the elite level, you'll see that there's differences between the people at the very pinnacle, the 1, 2, 3 guys, and then there's a bit of a drop. So same with bodybuilding.
Yeah.
If you can't win the local show using stuff,
there's
So
I'd take that point on him. But at what point does if you're that guy at a local level that's consistently being beaten by somebody else who's
using something,
it's on the supplementation, it's on the Ubereams. Let's say that obviously can have a demoralising effect and can mean that there might be athletes that choose not to compete any longer as well. So that's something. The other thing is that the long-term effects, both positive and negative, associated with that. So now we've got athletes that may have used substances in the past that are now competing naturally, but what kind of gains or what kind of advantages have they enjoyed as a result of their use? And that's not easily quantifiable. And it may have served as some conjecture around some recent matchups where, both parties are purporting to be natural, but then one may have gained an advantage through not being natural previously, and being able to retain some of the benefits of that growth. So it's a bit of an unusual paradigm that arm wrestling now finds itself in to find that leveling. And there's going to be two things there's going to be one thing that'll exacerbate. But it'll also be the thing that helps it, and it's money in the sport. Money in the sport will maybe pressure some to push themselves and to partake in substance use in order to gain that advantage. But their money into the sport over time would be that thing that means that, at different levels, at national levels or international competitions, that we can have a more stringent regime around testing and that type of thing, as the prize money and the sponsors that are associated with the sport. It's one of those things with bodybuilding that's kind of kept it somewhat away, and it's been the inability of bodybuilding over time to attract sponsors outside of the supplement world. It's very, very niche. You don't have a Toyota, or you don't. Whereas in, say, the world of golf and tennis and, say, the mainstream winter sports like the footballs and the soccers and the like, they attract those big brands. And one of the major reasons why, perhaps, why bodybuilding hasn't, has been because brands don't want to be associated with the negative side of substance use.
Yep.
My fear for arm wrestling, as it's now that sport that's going through that twilight zone of legitimacy. There's not a peak body that seems to be giving direction over these matters, and promoters are increasingly taking the initiative, and the rule set seemingly are by agreement, where we're in this twilight zone where the sport could go either way. It could go back to pubs and being one of the three sports that's played in front bars along with darts and pool, or it can catapult itself into mainstream consciousness in the same way as the UFC. And how it is that the UFC, I feel, attracted the Reeboks and the big brands was because it was a clean sport.
Yep.
And Reebok wants to be associated with, they don't want to be associated with the other stuff. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
And so arm wrestling is in this twilight zone. It's at the crossroads, and the next few years will be very telling. And this is no besmirchment on the great people like Devon Larratt, who's done probably more for the sport than anybody else, and continues to. And there's no besmirchment on any of the athletes that are involved. Everybody is trying to put on a great show and ensure that there's attention on the sport and that the sport continues to grow. And I don't believe there's any malice. And certainly within arm wrestling, no one's going to end up dead as a result of one athlete being juicier than the other, as it might be the case in, say, some of those fighting sports. So in this case, it's a relatively safe combat sport, and where the strength is largely obvious. And as we can see right now, as Devon posts and regrips and goes higher, and that's Michael Todd under the table, isn't it? Michael Todd's just getting pressed out there and has nowhere to go, and that was that. And so here we go. And this is a 220 Devon Larratt arm curling on a negative, albeit. Does he pull it back up? I can't remember. It's not a full extension. This is an arm wrestling curl, most definitely. This is not a. So there we go. I mean, that's 80 kilos. That's a lot of weight hanging over one arm. Doesn't matter. And one of the attractive things with arm wrestling for some time has been the phenomenon of the man on the left-hand side of the screen there, John Brzenk, who is essentially been the Hoist Gracie of arm wrestling, in that he's been the smaller guy, the David fighting the Goliaths, and that's been part of the attraction and mystique for everyday people who found themselves attracted to the sport. And it would be a shame to see some of that go away. And where the UFC was able to transition out of that period where you had the David and Goliath fights to going with weight divisions, and arm wrestling seems to be moving in that direction. What's a little bit concerning is even somebody like John Brzenk, who you'd imagine would comfortably stand around at 95, maybe 100 kilos, having to compete at 115, 120 kilos in order to even be competitive on the table.
It's evolution of the sport. And I think if it does follow the same trajectory and get to the same levels of mainstream like the UFC, it will go through maybe a 20, 30-year progression of performance enhancing being a mainstay and a necessary component to be competitive, until the sport gets to a level where you can get those major sponsors on board with money, and it's like, hey, we're not going to be involved in this unless you clean it up. Where the promotions might be big enough that's like, okay, now we can implement testing. Now we can start to look at doing that. But at the moment, if they started, no one was going to go to their event. If they said, oh, by the way, we're putting on this big event, but everyone's going to get tested, it's like, no one's turning up. Okay. It's like, we'll just go to the other one.
We'll go to the other pub.
Exactly. So, it's going to be a progression. At the moment, the progression of the sport in terms of where it is to where it will get to, if it continues, will involve, unfortunately. Well, I don't know if it's unfortunate. It's the way of sport at the moment.
So performance enhancers in the UFC, bad.
At the moment, they are not.
Well, they're not existent, but it was bad.
They're not existent.
No. But it was what was bad, and now it's been fixed. So it's no longer a problem.
It's not a problem in theory. From the outsider's perspective.
It's no longer. It's not a problem for the sport. You don't have people, sponsors, general public, fans, particularly. Right. No, it's not an issue for the UFC. So UFC have gone. That's a bad thing, and we're quite clear on that. We're not going to accept it.
Right.
That's not.
They've put a process in place, which makes it look like it's not being as used as it is. Yes, it might be.
So that's so we've got UFC said steroids bad, bodybuilding steroids good. They want
more steroids.
Like it. More steroids for the bodybuilding, and the natural guys can have some too.
Right?
Why not?
Yeah,
get it around. And arm wrestling's a bit in between, where good now, but not maybe great into the future as it transitions to the mainstream. Yeah, excellent. Well, we
cover it all.
I think we covered it. So, it was an awesome episode as always, man. Thanks so much again.
It was great.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And to all those people that are watching and hung in there right till now, where you can see more of this man on Sunday morning. Sunday morning here on the deep end with you can see more. Not just the left, but he may also show the right on. Oh no, hang on. It's getting it out. It's getting it out. There's the split, ladies and gentlemen. It's the bicep split that you've all come to see.
Probably can't see it.
So I've got a bicep split under here.
There you go,
It's under here. It's under. You just have to believe me. We'll bring you a whole lot more daily combat thoughts, views, reviews, and insights very, very soon. Thanks so much for joining us again. We'll talk to you very, very soon.